Okay.
My fortunate task to introduce today's intergenerational presenters. Rob DeLay, and I think you say DeLay, is that right, Rob? Rob
Yes, that's
DeLay,
correct. Rob DeLay is fine. Yes,
DeLay,
thank you.
fine, good. Is a 65-year-old adventurer, world traveler, and philosopher who comes from the Netherlands, but is now living in the Brazilian rainforest. And I should say one of the Brazilian rainforests because there is more than one. But he is what's called, and these are in his words, he is regenerating and rewilding himself. Wonderful. From an early age, he's been gripped by the question of consciousness and the crisis that humanity is headed for. Yes. And we're moving faster every minute. I heard him speak on Rick Moody's webinar that's titled Climate Change and Consciousness, and found that my own consciousness had shifted by the time he finished speaking. That doesn't happen to me very often. I am grateful to him for expanding my understanding of the rainforest's extraordinary ecosystem that is essential to our planetary health, and thankful to him for agreeing to speak here today, and better yet, introducing us to Shirley Krenak. Shirley is a leader from the indigenous Krenak people in southeast Brazil and the heavily damaged Mata Atlântica rainforest area of the mining state, Minas Gerais. Interestingly enough for Shirley, my next door neighbor is from Minas Gerais in Brazil, so I'm very familiar with that territory. She is a teacher, a writer, and prominent activist defending the rights of indigenous peoples, the rights of sacred rivers from poisoning by the mining companies, and the rights of nature in general. She is the founder of the Shirley Krenak Institute, which aims to spread knowledge about the history of indigenous peoples around the world. Welcome, Rob and Shirley, and we'll wait to introduce others until after you've had a chance to talk together and expand our understanding. Thank you. Rob.
Thank you, Jan. Shirley, pode chegar no áudio agora, por favor. So Shirley speaks Portuguese, and it's a great honor and pleasure to have my dear friend Shirley Krenak here. She is one of the most powerful indigenous leaders that I have come across. Although she's still quite young, I think she will grow into a world leader. That's personally my opinion. So thank you very much to seeing all of you, including some friends that I've have talked to before, like Rick, and also with Jan and Moira, I had earlier conversations. Thank you very much. Shirley, você quer dizer oi ao povo?
Sim, vou dizer. Erehei Awit, a todos vocês aí do outro lado do mundo, e muito obrigado pela oportunidade de poder falar e conhecer vocês.
Okay. She says Ere Awit. That's basically in her own language. It says health to you all in the world, and she's very happy to be invited to this session here and greets everybody around the world. Shirley, fala alto. Seu áudio às vezes não é muito forte, não. Ok, tá bom? Valeu. Okay. Jan, will you lead the conversation, or do you want us to start?
Rob, just a question. We have two engaging videos, couple minutes each, of Shirley, so we can maybe watch them.
Beautiful.
To get a little bit more in the spirit of it, and then move on into this exciting conversation.
Perfect. Shirley,
Okay.
eles vão mostrar dois vídeos de você, como você é agindo como líder na liderança, e depois a gente fala, ok?
Okay.
Here's the first one. Oops, hold on. Stop share. Just a Jeez. Okay. Just a second. We have an issue.
Momento, probleminha. Você sabe como é com essas sessões, sempre tem coisa técnica, mas ele está chegando.
When the technical host is having difficulty,
No,
then we know
yeah.
that we have difficulties.
Okay.
I think that we have a question here that we can chew on before we see the film. There's a question here from the tree doctor, Peter Whitehouse, Sylvanus. Chief Shirley, Krenak, what did the forests tell you about how they might be changing their breathing as the skies change? Rob, what does science tell us about how forests become carbon sources and not just from fires, rather than carbon sinks as CO2 levels rise in the atmosphere? Thank you both. These are his questions, and perhaps we could start until Osnet gets the video going.
Ok. Shirley, vamos primeiro olhar uma pergunta que alguém perguntou, como eu botei no chat. E você leu? Você quer que eu leia de novo? Como as florestas estão mudando sua respiração à medida que quando os céus agora estão mudando, quando tem uma mudança de clima, como as florestas estão reagindo nessa situação? Pode botar áudio.
Vocês estão me vendo bem, né? Uhum.
Sim,
Tá
agora
me ouvindo
sim.
bem?
Sim.
Primeiramente, eu gostaria de saudar todos os biomas. Eu gostaria de dizer que aqui eu represento a Mata Atlântica, eu represento a Amazônia, o Pantanal, o Cerrado, a Caatinga e o Pampa. E em segundo momento, diante dessa pergunta, eu confesso que nós, povos indígenas, estamos muito tristes, muito preocupados com a reação do mundo no que diz respeito à questão ambiental.
Ok, eu vou traduzir, porque também é demais para a gente. So, first of all, Shirley wants to greet and all the biomes of South America and say that they're all interlinked and as important, whether it's the Amazon, the Mata Atlântica, the Cerrado, the Pampa, or the Caatinga, or the Pantanal. And she says that there is deep sadness in the hearts of the indigenous people about the state of nature and the deterioration of the biomes in South America. Obrigado. Pode falar.
E nós, enquanto povos indígenas, a nossa espiritualidade, ela todos os dias, ela busca ter conectividade com toda a força ancestral que vem da floresta.
Ok, deixe-me falar isso. Okay, every day our spirits connect to all the ancestral life and all the elements of nature to reconnect to the great spirit of all life. Pode falar de novo.
E à medida que esses crimes ambientais vão se espalhando por todos os biomas, fica difícil a cada dia para nós, povos indígenas, nos conectar espiritualmente com a força do universo.
And for us, it's very difficult today that with all these crimes against the nature to reconnect with our spirits, to the spirit of nature and the universe every day. And it's getting more difficult and more difficult. Sim.
E porque nos preocupa muito esse individualismo dos seres humanos ao redor desse universo todo, sabe? Nos preocupa muito essa falta de pertencimento desses seres humanos que destroem com a natureza. Isso nos preocupa.
We are very worried about the individualism of modern man, modern humans, and how they relate in such a distorted way to nature, and with that to spirituality.
E aqui no Brasil, a questão ambiental está ficando tão imensa, os crimes ambientais estão ficando tão grandes, tão imensos, que a cada dia que passa está ficando difícil proteger não só o meio ambiente, mas como também proteger aqueles que a gente ama.
And the crimes here in Brazil are getting so against nature and the environment are getting so large that it's more and more difficult not just to protect the environment, but protect everything that we love, because these crimes penetrate all of life, and it is difficult to protect anything and everything we love. See.
E como a gente estava numa reunião ontem, é o seguinte, é porque muitos países, o mundo todo, foca muito em um único bioma, sabe? É como se os outros biomas não fossem importantes para todo esse equilíbrio climático do mundo. Então, nós precisamos pensar de forma coletiva, de recuperar todos os biomas.
Entendo. Okay, what she says, and it's right now quite often you see that there is a focus on specific parts and forests and biomas in the world, but we have to see all nature as one and as a collective that is together bringing balance to our planet, and not focus just on parts. It is one total collective nature that is keeping balance on this planet. Pode falar.
E para iniciar e para recomeçar toda essa visão ampla e mundial de recuperação ambiental de todos os biomas, nós vamos precisar muito, mas muito mesmo, trabalhar com a educação e com a empatia também das pessoas.
And we need to involve everybody in the world to understand that we need to protect and regenerate nature everywhere. And for this, we need education and make sure that people have empathy for nature, because that's the only way how we can save nature. And she didn't say it, but I'll just say it, and with that ourselves.
Rob.
Cada bioma.
Yes.
I wonder if you might add to this your overview about the role of this ecosystem that is and what is happening, to give us some picture.
Yeah, okay, Shirley, agora eu vou falar pouco minha história. So, as I've been in the rainforest for about 10 years, let me start with a very hopeful message, and that is to say that it's amazing how fast nature bounces back if we just simply protect it and let it go and help it just a little bit. So let me first start with that positive action. What you see right now is that if the damage gets too large to an ecosystem, then it's not just getting smaller, it also degrades at all levels. And I agree with Shirley that it's also about spirituality. I think nature is consciousness. We are part of nature, and our consciousness is just a small part of nature. And you see that nature itself is slowly losing the energy to live, the will to live in a sense. In that sense, it's very much alive. And that's my personal observation. I could say something about greenhouse gases and about the tree dieback, etc., which is all important from a scientific and observational standpoint. But there's a deeper relation that we have to nature in a sense. You know, with every breath that we take, we are getting a present actually from the algae in the sea that make oxygen for us, and the forests that produce oxygen. We are in a symbiosis of very, very deep symbiosis with all life on our planet.
Sylvanus has mentioned, I wish that you could ask Chief Shirley, that spirit is identified with breath. And of course, that's what's given to us by the oxygen generated by the forest.
Okay.
And perhaps the question is for Chief Shirley, is spirit and our spirit and breath identified in her?
Yes,
religion?
I will ask that. Shirley, tem alguém que aqui está perguntando que no inglês o espírito e a respiração são palavras que são interconectadas. E eles queriam saber se para você, na sua língua, na sua cultura, o espírito e a respiração do ar, entrar e sair do ar, é conectado, é parte da mesma coisa? Oh, mute, unmute. Bota no... Sim.
O nosso corpo, Robert, é terra. E o que corre dentro de nós é água. Como não respirar a terra? Como assim?
Ok.
Né? Nosso espírito é conectado com o nosso corpo, porque o nosso corpo é terra e o que corre dentro de nós é um grande rio.
Okay. She says, well, our bodies are earth. What's flowing through our bodies is water, is the river. We are earth, we are river. The earth breathes, we breathe. There is no difference. How can you make a difference? How can you make a separation of the two? Okay, obrigado.
Wonderful. Would Rob, you oh, there we are from Ethan. Can you read that? How could we rebalance power?
I'm also going to put that to Shirley as well. Shirley, aqui tem uma pergunta: como podemos rebalançar o poder das indústrias e o povo no poder com as ações contra a natureza? O que você acha que precisamos fazer?
Robert, eu acho não, tenho certeza absoluta que quando a gente trabalhar definitivamente, nossa, eu acabei de falar aqui, acabou de chegar um espírito da floresta aqui perto de mim agora, você acredita?
Fala isso de novo?
Acabei de sentir o espírito da floresta aqui comigo agora.
Acredito. Vou explicar às pessoas assim. Deixe por um momento, fique um momento com silêncio e eu vou explicar. Okay. She says she wanted to answer the question, and she says, "Wow, the spirit of the forest is actually really enveloping me right now." So she is almost. She is trying to respond to the question, but she's really being visited by the spirit. And believe you me, I understand up to a certain point what is happening to her. E aí?
Vamos lá.
Respira. Estamos juntos. Vamos lá.
Normal. Vamos lá. Talvez a resposta que eu tenha que dar aqui, a gente tem entendimento que é uma resposta ancestral. Por muitos e muitos tempos, nós ficamos gritando, pedindo socorro.
Uhum.
Por muito e muito tempo, nós ficamos pedindo que, por favor, nos escutem, escutem os povos originários, porque nós temos respostas, nós temos soluções
Ok,
para os
vou explicar.
problemas.
Vou explicar essa parte. Okay. So she, after being really visited and enveloped by what she says, this spirit of the forest, she says, and you can see that it's still happening to her. Anyway, she says, well, I'll give you an answer that basically comes from the depth of our ancestry. And we have been asking for many, many years and pleading that people listen to us because we have solutions to the great ills of our time, which are connected to the destruction of nature. Eu fiz uma tradução mais ou menos, mas ok, pode ir.
E a grande preocupação nossa é que o processo da escuta está cada dia se distanciando, sabe, Robert? Então, se a gente não começar através do processo da escuta e trabalhando a base, né, que são nossas crianças, que é a educação, a gente não vai conseguir avançar com ações positivas para evitar a extinção da humanidade.
Yeah, she says what is necessary is deep listening, and this deep listening is not taught by education right now, and that needs to be taught to children to listen deep to nature, to the environment, to what they are. And if we don't do that, this will our humanity will become extinct.
Exactly.
E o capitalismo é algo que está avançando de um jeito muito violento, muito bruto. Esse tal progresso que as pessoas querem que vá para frente está tirando vidas não só de seres humanos, mas vidas do meio ambiente.
Sim.
Então, de que forma?
Sim.
De que forma os CRAI, que eu falo vocês, podem ajudar os povos indígenas a evitar essa extinção da humanidade?
Okay.
Através do processo da escuta e da educação, Robert.
Mm-hmm. So she says capitalism is an extremely brutal and violent system that not only destroys the life of many people, but destroys all life, life also of nature and of future generations if we don't turn it around. And people need to listen to nature and need to listen to us because we need a much gentler system. And for this, the young ones need to be educated to understand this deeply.
Nós precisamos de mais proteção para os nossos, para as nossas lideranças que estão de frente da proteção ambiental e da proteção dos povos. Nós precisamos de recursos viáveis e corretos que venham para as instituições de forma correta para poder recuperar uma terra que foi totalmente destruída. Nós precisamos levar a história de todos os biomas para o mundo inteiro, porque ninguém conhece os outros biomas. Então, se não conhece os outros biomas, como que a gente vai construir ações positivas para recuperá-los?
Okay, we need several things from society. First, we need protection of our people and forests, because that's the only way how we can survive. We need the world to come together to help us with resources and finance to actually do the regeneration that's absolutely necessary. And lastly, the world needs to understand the interconnectedness and the importance of all ecosystems around the world and understand that the totality is important, not just parts.
That I think is a wonderful lead in to thinking about the intergenerational relationships themselves that will nurture the care that is needed. And I want, there are a couple of people who have already submitted comments and questions about that topic. I do want to introduce here Jake Krenak, who is my partner here. I'm 90 years old. He's, I don't know, in his 30s, Jake? I don't know how old you are.
27.
27, right. All of 27. He knows a lot more than about a lot of things than I do, and that's the point. He works with Earth Justice, which is the largest, has approximately 200 environmental lawyers on their staff who work for no cost with nonprofit organizations, individuals, groups of individuals, to protect nature. And I would love it, Jake, if you, before we go on to Kathy and Sylvanus, et cetera, and others who want to ask questions and comments, if you could just offer your comment and question at this point.
Sure, and thank you so much, Jan. It's really special to be here with all of you. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C., and so I'm on the policy team here at Earth Justice. So I try to push Congress and the White House in a more environmentally sustainable direction. And it's a lot of, you're pushing uphill sometimes. But you know, I think a few of the comments that really struck me just now that I've been thinking about is just so all biomes being interconnected, and that we kind of, I think we share like a deep sadness about the state of nature that Shirley was describing, that we kind of, it's on us to try to protect the environment, protect the thing we love, and the piece of that that's stuck with me is that this like separation between us and the environment is almost an illusion, you know, that separation is, I think like the seat of consciousness for some reason, maybe, you know, it feels like it's behind our eyes. And if it's, I think it's easy, at least for me, to sometimes just kind of get caught up and feel that I am just an individual within a system, not that I am the system, you know, that everything, that it's a feedback. And so I would just maybe ask, you know, Rob or Shirley if they have kind of any daily practice or way of trying to kind of cut that illusion of separation, of trying to just reconnect and kind of see your relationship as interconnected. I feel it sometimes, but if I'm being honest, sometimes I don't feel it. And so I'd love a way to tap back into that in moments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Let me first tell my experience, and then I'll ask Shirley. Shirley, eu vou perguntar você uma coisa, não um minutinho, mas primeiro eu vou explicar uma coisa a Jake do meu experiência. So actually, I don't have a specific practice, but in a sense, I could say that if I'm in the forest, basically, I always say I don't meditate; the forest meditates me. It happens to me all the time, and it can happen through the wind in the leaves, through sunlight that's coming in, to birds that are playing, to a tortoise that is passing by, to the sound of a bird, and it just goes on, and that somehow reconnects me to the whole experience, and it makes my own life not only deeply rich, but also completely insignificant in respect to what I'm part of, and that's it. Also shelters me, in effect. I'm never lonely in nature, so it's something that comes to me rather than that I'm trying to rake it in, let's say. Is that okay? Gives that an impression? Shirley, eles queriam saber se você tem prático, ritual diariamente, como você está se conectando com o espírito da natureza.
O meu povo, ele sofreu com um crime que aconteceu em 5 de novembro de 2015, que matou o Watu. Isso você já sabe, né, Robert?
Sei.
E a cada dia que passa, para nós, enquanto Krenak, fica mais difícil se conectar com a natureza, porque ela está se acabando. E as pessoas estão destruindo tudo.
Horrível, horrível. Vai explicar.
E o que nos mantém firme, intactos, diante da força do universo, é que nós sabemos, nós temos esse entendimento ancestral que somos guardiões desse universo, mesmo quando vier modificações nele. Nós vamos continuar aqui, nós vamos voltar. E é isso que nos deixa firme para nos conectar com a força do universo de uma forma bem ampla e bem grande. É o que nos mantém firme e de pé.
Okay, entendo, obrigado. Okay, what she says, she started again, I forgot the date, I think she said 15 November 2015, when the dam broke that murdered their river. She says, since then it has been a daily struggle for us to reconnect to nature, because our biggest connection was via the living waters of the river with the fish and the plants that were in there. And that is it's a person. It may be the most important relative that they had, and it was that relative was killed. And she said it's very difficult for us. It's a struggle to keep the connection with nature, because we had the connection through the river. However, we stay strong because we know from our ancestral ancestral background that we are the guardians of nature, the guardians of life, and we will go on protecting. But it's a struggle. It's a very difficult struggle.
Hoje de manhã, minha filha Iná tem 10 anos. E esses dias ela me fez uma pergunta, minha filha. Mãe, por que os não índios estão começando aos poucos a se importar agora com o que está acontecendo com o meio ambiente? Será que é porque muitos deles estão morrendo, mamãe? Porque quando é só nós morrendo, ninguém se importa. Agora estão se importando, né? Porque muitos dos não índios estão morrendo também. Eu falei, poxa vida, minha filha está com 10 anos, né? E veio falar, é como se assim, agora a gente se importa, né? Porque o problema está vindo para nós. Então agora a gente precisa se importar.
Okay, so Shirley says that her daughter, who is 10 years old, qual é o nome dela?
Iná.
Gina? Okay, so her daughter, 10 years old, Gina, she asked the question, Mom, these days it seems that people are getting, the non-Indians are getting more and more worried about nature. Why is that? Is it because they also start dying like us? And she says, yeah, so well, basically that was it's like we are not important to the big outside world, but only when they start feeling the real effects of what they have destroyed are they finally waking up.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a deeply sad story, I would say.
Aí, como todo mundo aqui está fazendo pergunta para mim, eu também tenho direito de perguntar, né?
Lógico,
então,
pode perguntar.
Então,
She would like to ask a question. Pergunta de novo?
Quando foi que o não indígena parou de se importar? Quando foi?
She asked the question to us, says, when did the non-Indians stopped actually caring about nature? What happened? What happened? Eu pedi essa questão, se alguém tem uma resposta, pode dizer.
Good question. Anyone have the answer? I know that it
Well,
was.
this is Nancy. That's a great question. And it takes me back to what Chief Shirley said earlier about the excessive individualism in at least the Northern Hemisphere right now, and a lack of understanding of how we are connected inexorably to people near and far. And I think we've stopped caring about the larger issues because culturally we're so focused on ourselves and the immediate present that we're not thinking ahead about our relationship with others and our moral responsibility to people who are coming after us. We're so consumed by individualism.
Good, wonderful response.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Let me just quickly, otherwise I will forget to do some of the translation. Em breve, agora eu ouvi, Shirley, 3 respostas. Primeiramente, a gente perdeu essa grande conexão com a natureza, primeiramente porque nossa cultura é muito individualista, e também perdemos a conexão com o espírito. E o terceiro foi que perdemos visão de conexão com as outras gerações. Então, são 3 respostas, mas vai ter mais. Tem mais gente que quer falar.
Mas é muito bom ouvir, Robert, porque é ouvindo essas respostas que a gente ainda nos fortalece na questão de trabalhar a educação, sabe? De trabalhar o pertencimento das pessoas ao meio ambiente. Está precisando disso, sabe? E é por isso que eu venho trabalhando tanto nessa ação, que você já sabe, educacional, terapêutica, ancestral, não só aqui no Brasil, mas fora do Brasil. Porque a gente precisa aguçar essa essência que se perdeu nas pessoas não indígenas, sabe? Porque senão nós não vamos conseguir avançar na luta pela proteção do meio ambiente. O individualismo vai continuar. A gente precisa aguçar nessas pessoas.
Aguçar?
A essência provocar, trazer de volta a essência que está escondida e que foi massacrada por muito tempo, sabe? Ela está ali. A gente precisa acender esse fogo de novo, sabe? As pessoas para trazer esse pertencimento de volta, sabe? Não está perdido. A esperança é a última que morre.
Isso. So Shirley, actually, she says, well, she likes the responses so far, and she says they're definitely part of the answer. And she says that's why it's so crucially important to change education in a sense to reconnect to spirits, to nature, and to the continuation of life through the generations. And it's so incredibly important to feel that connection also. It's not just something that you can teach in words. It's something that you need to provoke, wake up, stir up the fire and the connection in people that is really there, but that is smoldering and right now is not doing its work.
I'd like to ask Kathy Bailey here. You have a question in the chat box, Kathy. I wonder if you'd like to ask that in person. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jen. The things that come to mind for me right now, because I am in a place of deep learning intergenerationally about land and our First Nations people, I think of a place for the people in the U.S. I think we don't have a sense of place in the way that our First Nations people honored nature because of their sense of place. Maybe it's because here in the US we are babies, but our place starts with when we took it over, and it talks about colonialism more than it talks about nature. I also think the role of our religion, our Christianity, had a lot to do with suppressing some of our ancestors. For those of us that came from European descent, you know, before all of the religions, there was some honor to nature that I feel personally that I crave and I think is missing for many of us. And the other thing is, I think a lot after advocacy for aging for nearly 20 years, is that for my elders that I advocated for, and for myself, I think there was a lot of generational trauma that came from our system that defines success and who we are through our great marketing in the 50s and everything else. So those of us that in our families did have some of these stories and connections, the trauma was to suppress it. And I think the best example is our First Nations people when we sent our Native American children off to camp, you know, to reorient them to how they should think like us, when probably generationally our grandparents should have all been sent off to camp to learn more from our First Nations people. Those are the thoughts that are running through me, Jan.
Good.
I'll do a quick update for Shirley, otherwise she's very much alone here. So tem mais elementos que ela estava falando. Primeiramente, ela falou que a gente da Europa, quando eles foi nos Estados Unidos, eles perdeu a conexão com o lugar. Eles não estavam no lugar. Também ela falou que tem, ela acha que a religião da cristianidade também é parte do problema, porque ela não dá lugar para essa conexão com a natureza. Ele acaba com isso. E fora disso, o sistema de correr atrás de sucesso é uma das coisas que está destruindo as relações com a natureza. E tem muito trauma que está rolando na nossa experiência.
Por isso que trabalhar a força do perdão é essencial.
Okay, I think we can go on.
Okay, very good. Sylvia, would you unmute yourself from Argentina? You have a question?
Oh, I usually have comments, not questions. Many questions, of course. But regarding Shirley's question, when humans entered into this, you know, some 500 years ago, there came a huge paradigm shift that it is a process that little by little a scientific worldview, Western scientific worldview came in, which is very fragmented. So, all these explorations that happened some 500 years ago, mostly from Europe to other parts of the world. From one sense, the world became very near, you know. It's very, we are here right now, so many people from different parts of the world. This is a process, but in a way, a very fragmented paradigm belief that created isolated, egocentric humans that feel and see themselves as separated from the rest, from the world. So, and that creates fear. And this idea of success that by exploiting other people and nature and so on. So it's that is something that, in fact, sometime in the future, perhaps very near future, we will make a shift and realize that interconnectedness Shirley speaks about, and so many others around the world. So that is something I hope. My English, I'm also from South America, and I grew up in the northern Argentina, and know very well how much the forest there changed, and with people without realizing what happens, blindness. And okay, so that's it. The blindness of the way we read the world. Thank you.
Great. Rob, do you want to translate some of that for Shirley?
Well, actually, I already said to her that it's quite a long story for me to translate. But basically, we touched on these points, that it is this separation that somehow has happened from the Western culture, and also in our drive over the whole to colonize the whole world, somehow is part of that rupture that needs to be cured now, and deeply cured, in order for us to be able to create a sustainable future. There's no doubt for me as well, and in that sense, I'm just reacting to Sylvia, that I completely agree with. That is exactly what we need to do, and pretty fast. We're running out of time.
I noticed that Nancy said that she thinks that the pandemic has actually helped to raise consciousness, and perhaps I hope that that's true. I'd like to just ask a big question here for all of us to consider. So let's say now that the world looks, the future looks pretty hopeless. But let's fast forward to 2040, let's say 20 years from now, and we got through it. What did we get? What did we do to get there? What is it? In other words, what is the core? What is most important? Frankly, what I'm hearing from what I have heard Shirley say is that education for children is incredibly important, but I know that education for older adults is also incredibly important. How do we progress with this process of education, or is there another route?
This is Nancy. I am thinking about what's happening in the United States about gun control right now as it relates to how do we progress. And one of the things that really strikes me is that clearly, legislation is needed globally. That's how the changes we need will happen. So the key is, how do you influence legislators and get them to change their minds? And I'm seeing the power of human story. It seems to me that while many of us really respect and appreciate data, and science and the rational part of all this, that what really changes hearts and minds is not facts, but it's the human experience of the story. When you see that young girl, telling what happened in her school and how she had to cover herself with blood of her classmate to survive, there is a power in the telling of that story that's very compelling, and that's quite different. It affects a different part of our brain, than all the facts in the world about gun reform in the United States or in, so-called civilized countries. And I think we need to get more stories out that are told by people who are affected to change hearts and minds.
Very good, thank you.
I have a very specific
yes.
Answer to that 2040 question, and that's especially in the north, we talk a lot. I mean, it's almost Greta Thunberg too much blah, blah, blah. Because we don't realize how bad the state of the world is. It's like when people find out they have cancer, it's quite often already stage 3 or 4. It's getting pretty late to turn things around. So what I would say is we have to get out of our chairs and do action. We're running out of time.
We actually have 15 minutes beyond the hour to go.
No, I said we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. We indeed will. Sorry. But now and forever, right? Yes. What is forever?
Yes.
Oh dear.
So I think it's very important. The way I see when for instance, Shirley and I both have been busy today. A report came out yesterday. There are 33 million people in Brazil right now are hungry. In Africa, the situation is worse. And there's hardly a word of it in the media. And I think people have, in sheltered places where most of us come from, have no idea how that situation is in large parts of the world, especially in the tropical areas.
Sylvanus, our tree doctor, you have, I know, a route to a positive future. And it's one actually that we're pushing here at Pass It On Network, which is more intergenerational interaction. And as we know from Ethan and Ruben, who have been working on this topic of, what would you have to say to us at this point?
Thank you. First, always gratitude to Chief Shirley and Rob, and to Ethan and Ruben for last week, and for Kathy for the session in July. Intergenerational learning, intergenerational conversations. I think we're missing spirit. We've got religions in the world, but somehow many of them got distorted. We've got to go to the core of what it means to be a human being in relationship to other. And when we find that spirit, we've got to bring it out into activism, as Rob said, and as Shirley said. I mean, Shirley's Rivers was destroyed. Just think about that. The sense of place is so important. I made a comment about the oak tree that is 350 years old and is overlooking what I call my backyard, but it's not my backyard. It just happens to be close to the house that I occupy. So, and I'll say one last thing. Gratitude again for the fact that we can think about things differently. Space and time, the indigenous people tell us, are not separate. We're not on an atomic clock. We are on a storytelling clock that will allow us as human beings to take that power we have to tell stories, just as Rob and Shirley are telling such powerful stories, and Ruben and Ethan did last week. So let's tell new stories, take them into action, and keep supporting the Pass It On Network.
Rob, I know that Shirley put her hand up.
Shirley, você queria falar sobre essa questão de fazer novo futuro bem mais lindo que esse de agora?
Então, nosso futuro não é em 2040, não. Nosso futuro é agora. Né? Se a gente lança essa data de 2040, o povo fala, nossa, então vamos só 2040, tem que parar com isso. A gente precisa pensar num futuro próspero, coletivo, não individualista. Nós precisamos pensar em algo positivo agora.
Okay.
Porque nós temos pouco tempo. Se a gente for esperar até 2040, até lá já não tem mais ninguém não, gente.
Shirley is very clear. She says we shouldn't think about a good future in 2040. We have to create that future now, and that is about prosperity for all, protection of nature. There was another one that she forgot. That I forgot that she said. But anyway, she says we need to act now to turn things around. And we haven't been rehearsing this, but she said we don't have a lot of time.
Right. Right.
Ok, obrigado.
Eu tô
So,
Eu cresci, Robert, de luta. Eu cresci em ação de luta. Eu cresci assim. Então, tudo tem que ser no imediato. Se a gente demora, faz ações para equilibrar o meio ambiente, para fortalecer o clima de forma muito lenta, né? Isso nós não vamos ter resposta positiva, não.
yeah,
O momento é agora. As ações precisam
see,
ser
yeah,
feitas agora,
yeah. So,
imediatamente. Ações prósperas para o meio ambiente precisam ser feitas agora. Chega de teoria, agora é prática. É hora de plantar árvore, plantar rio, plantar semente, porque se for para blá, 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 igual você disse, nós vamos chegar, não vamos chegar nem ao simples pó em 2040.
sim. Eu,
É
eu,
agora ou é nunca.
E estou risando porque estava quase dizendo a mesma coisa em inglês com eles. So she was just repeating it, saying we have to do it now. There's no 2040. It's now that we have to put, we have to seed, we have to do action. We have to seed the trees. She said we have to seed the rivers. Where we have to seed the future now.
I just want to ask Famada. Famada, you've put in your comments into the chat, and I wondered if you could read them for us or repeat what you've had to say. Famada is responsible for more than 1,000 or 2,000 people, older adults in Durban, South Africa, who have been through horrendous storms and flooding and damaging of their systems in their buildings in the last month. And what she is speaking here is directly to what it is that has been asked. Famada, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, thank
Good,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, I think, I've been listening to the conversation and I agree there has to be all of these legislative frameworks, and I agree with Nancy as well. There's such power in the storytelling, but I also think that there is a place for individual intervention. As I explained, I'm mom to a 9-year-old, and I keep on saying to people she's a child of the earth. And seriously, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, she lives up to this this way that I describe her. So she has an absolute love for all things natural. We're not allowed to kill any trees or cut down any trees, but there's the sense that we are part of something bigger than just ourselves. And I think, if each one of us makes a conscious decision to parent differently, then the generations that come after us think differently about the world. I think, it's unrealistic to assume that everyone's going to abandon this capitalistic way of the world. But I think change happens one at a time. Each one of us makes that conscious decision. But I also think grandparents have such a role to play as second parents, because children listen to them differently. We are meant to be, as parents, I'm supposed to be the disciplinarian, but the older adults have a different role to play, and they imagine differently with younger children, and perhaps that's a role we should be thinking about as well, where older people encourage younger people to imagine a different world and help them find spaces to discover how that happens.
Thank you, Famada. I agree. Parenting. We all need to think like, all of us old people need to think like the parents that we are. And even those of us who are not parents can be thinking about caring. What is the word caring? Not just caregiving, but caring. Jake, do you have any comments before we close?
It's just, this conversation has helped me think more globally about the challenges we face. Earth justice is largely domestically focused, and we look at things like FPIC, like free, prior, and informed consent of communities that are going to be impacted by a project, and trying to make sure that they have an opportunity to weigh in on different kinds of projects that are moving forward, especially, you know, in the US, we just had all this infrastructure funding pass, which is great because we need new roads and bridges, but, you know, there are a lot of interests trying to get that money and build projects that go through kind of the most burdened communities. And I think, like, I think of our role specifically, like NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. It's like one of our very best tools to make sure that people have a way of weighing in that process. And anyway, I've had a very narrow you know, pair of glasses on looking at the US for a long time, and this conversation just kind of helped broaden that quite a bit.
Well,
So thank you.
Really what you're saying, and Jake, is giving voice, the importance of giving people the voice to speak up and speak out. And that's really what we're trying to do here, because and we need to be able to give nature itself a chance to be heard. That's where the deep listening comes in. And I just going to turn it over to you guys, Moira and Osnet. I know that you are asking people want to fill out a feedback form. You want to talk about the next session with Kathy Bailey, and then the final fourth session in August, which will be with Peter Whitehouse and Sylvanus, really helping us to reflect on all four of these sessions about reweaving the web of life. I just want to say, Rob, I just wish that we could all communicate directly with Chief Shirley and express our thanks to her for the extraordinarily important work that she's doing.
Yeah.
This is for Shirley.
Okay.
Just tell her this is for Shirley.
Jan,
all we can do.
can I say something that she hasn't asked this, but I'm going to ask you because I know that her institute right now is about education, but right now the funds that they have, they basically give away for to feed people. So I would be very grateful if somehow people who are better off in this group maybe could look if they could do a little bit of help. So because she is basically just giving away, it's called Cesta Básica. It's
put it into the chat box, please.
Food baskets for people right now. I do it daily as well, but I'm talking specifically for Shirley. Yes.
Please put that in and give us a website where individuals would go to donate.
Yeah, there's no direct way to do that. Actually, it could be done via my foundation in Holland, because that has a PayPal, because she doesn't have that.
Well, there's always time. We can send it along when you figure it out. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Just let us know. And Moira.
Yes, indeed. Jen, I would just like to see if Rebecca is still with us and like her to talk, because Rebecca comes from one of the driest countries in Africa. It's totally almost desertic. And just recently their president has made a huge act about food scarcity and food security. And I'd love Rebecca, if she's here, just to say a few words about what's happening in Botswana. Rebecca, are you here? Oops. I think that maybe she has some, I know that there are always lots of problems with, and then I could also ask Malebo, who's also from the northern part of South Africa, which also has a lot of areas, arid areas.
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes, Rebecca. Yes.
I didn't know because I'm using the phone. The computer is misbehaving.
Okay, we'd love to see you.
Phone. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, I'll just share. Just briefly, like you are saying, Botswana, as you all know, is almost half desert. And rain here is a problem. So what is happening is that South Africa and Zimbabwe are the people who have been helping us, even when we get to horticulture. Very simple things. Now, beginning of the year, the president took a bold step to say, no, we need a national initiative on horticulture, that we stop importing things like tomatoes, potatoes from South Africa, and we try to produce in our own country. Regardless of the fact, like I'm saying, water here is very scarce. So what the government is currently doing is giving out grants in the form of trying to encourage, almost it cuts across anyone 18 years and over. If you want to start to plant so that you can produce, you are given money through the National Development Bank. But the problem is that ever since this initiative, shops are empty because we can't produce enough for the whole nation. Right now, the current statistics is that at least we need 116% production to be able to just to fill in few shops in Botswana. So this is just an effort where the government is saying you have land, and this land can be some source of your economy. Let us try to develop interest, develop love, develop relationship with whatever we have so that we can produce. And like I'm saying, this is a noble initiative. But at the same time, when we look at the issue of scarcity of water, we have a problem. It's just a new initiative because they just started disbursing the funds in March this year. But we see many youth going in, trying to take advantage, especially that they know the government is buying. If you want a tent, if you want this, the government will buy for you, just to encourage them to do something. But the issue of sustainability of it, and of course, like I've already said, the issue of land also for those people who are interested in plowing, and mostly the issue of where do we get the rains, because we don't have big rivers in Botswana, we don't have lakes, we don't have, but there is that love to use the nature to support us, because we know that it is through the nature that we can survive. So I think that is what I really wanted. Someone, I had invited one young people who is engaged in this horticulture initiative, but unfortunately he just called to say he can't connect. So I think for now, Moira, that's what I can say, that we have this brilliant idea from the president, supporting it even with money, but the issue is always, where do we get all these other things so that we can produce for the nation? But we wish that we can look at the nature and see what we can reap from what is abundant land in our country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. I don't know, Rob, if you have any...
Have you noticed that Famada has put in a message here saying that she has just met with a 24-year-old innovator who has designed a system which is sustainable and uses less water for agricultural production. So perhaps there's some sharing that can happen there. That sounds wonderful, Famada.
Rebecca.
And that is in South Africa?
Rebecca, I've already said in the chat that if you want to connect to me, I am also the chair of the World Climate School, and we have a group of young African climate leaders, including in Botswana. And if you want to connect through me, then I'll connect you to the local teams.
I'll definitely do that. Thank you. I'll definitely
Thank
do
you.
that.
What a
Thank you.
treat. What a treat. Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. I must just pop in a commercial. Please have a look at the chat box and fill in our feedback form because it really helps us to shape our future sessions. Jan, I turn over you to
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just hope that you will take praise for yourself, Rob, for the difficult task of translating and speaking. Thank you. And I certainly hope that
My pleasure.
we'll communicate with Chief Shirley that we want to continue our relationship. And we hope that she will be with us for in the future as well.
I will say this right now quickly. Shirley, muito obrigada para a sua presença. Ela estava bem, muito impressionada com sua visita e eles esperam que você fique em contato com elas no futuro, tá? Ok, obrigado.
Gratidão, viu, a todos vocês aí pela oportunidade.
Okay, thank you everybody for inviting me and for the opportunity.
Thank you
very much.
Take
Right.
care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Look forward to seeing you in July for the third of this 4 series. 50 by 50. And we'll be hearing from Kathy Bailey and her daughter.
Wonderful. Very good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. It's
Bye,
been
everybody.
a delight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Peter, for coming and adding so much.
Well,
And
Sylvan,
Karen, it's wonderful to see you.
What's interesting in this conversation is we didn't hear as much from Rob about the science side, which I think is one of the things that kind of shook you up, Jan. It
is, and I'm very disappointed about that, to be honest.
Well, I think the atmospheric rivers, which I put in the chat, when Shirley was talking about this, when I asked the question about where does spirit flow, well, of course, it flows in water, it flows in air, it just happens in our language. And of course, water has oxygen and carbon dioxide in it. So her message that everything is connected is an important message.
Yes.
I also asked Rob, the problem with these forests is it's not just the fires, but when the conditions in the atmosphere change, the rainforest will become carbon, they will go the other way. They will start releasing carbon. So, I mean, Shirley was quite right to say, you know, this is not 2040. This is, we cannot wait. We have to imagine what we do tomorrow, not in 2040.
Right. Exactly. Very good. We should bring that point up in the future session.
So, Kathy, Jan, apologize. I mean, looking forward to July. I also said in the chat, or I said to Rick Moody, the Druids were arriving. This notion that pass it on is international, but that the spirits of trees are in indigenous places all around the world. And I think Kathy will bring that with her daughter to the fore. So Kathy and I, so does anybody know what a female Druid is called?
No.
A witch.
No, how do you pronounce it, Kathy?
I think it's Bandrui, but maybe I drank too much Jambui in my day. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the pronunciation. But it is the female Druid. It's Bandrui. So yeah, we'll take a little journey about the sanctuary. I'll let Annie talk about why she and Deirdre are vegans and are moving forward with an animal sanctuary, how they will be working in an agroforestry style on their 200 acres, and how we have intentionally called in our ancestors mostly Ireland, Scotland, and Wales to guide us. And so in the absence of an existing relationship with any First Nations people, which the kids are developing, you know, with the Wabanaki tribe, we will draw upon those roots. And they're all entangled, and they're not as dissimilar most times as one would think. So, but this idea of place is really, I'm glad you reinforced that, Peter, in this session, because this disconnection from place, you know, it was really tangled in our last sessions, Jan, when we talked about work. The workplace became so much of the American identity for so many of us. I'm not sure where that fits, but somehow we don't connect with nature and place, and that's in there somewhere. It's not the whole, but it's definitely a part of it. So I'm anxious for Annie to come back from Scotland so I can sit and talk with her and Deirdre. We'll be up in Arcadia next weekend, have a nice chat. And she was going to try to take her grandfather on a deep dive of the ancestors and to see what his thoughts are about her project right now.
Great, that's great.
Yeah.
I was curious, Elizabeth Hurley, are you there? Elizabeth? No. Maybe she just left it on. I just was curious. Okay,
and you guys have all read Braiding Sweetgrass, right? Everybody in this chat has read that book, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And by the way, Robin Wall Kimmerer wrote the introduction to a book of stories from Orion magazine, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary tomorrow, I believe it is, with a program. It's called Old Growth. It's a really lovely title.
I wonder if it would be possible to get a copy of the article without having the magazine.
I think Rebecca is not on mute. Rebecca is not on mute. Yeah, thank you.
So it's a book, if you're referring to what I just mentioned.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Old Growth.
In fact, I think I have it somewhere very close by.
So the title of the book is Old Growth.
Here it is. It'll probably wander around, but.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, it's a series of the best writings from the magazine that's celebrating its 40th anniversary. So I think we have to give a little thought to how we're going to organize the last session in August. Maybe not now because we're close to the time we said but one thing that the indigenous people bring besides a sense of place is a sense of ceremony. So, and this deep listening that Jan keeps emphasizing is so important. I think we should maybe do some kind of practice thing. And I'm not exactly sure. I mean, we could actually inspire it by, this has some poetry in it as well. We could start with poetry reading or something like that. But I think if we're going to take it deeper, it might be good to kind of disrupt our format a little bit with Maura and Jan's permission.
Yeah. I definitely think we should get something so that every individual who participates will be reflecting on the learning, reflecting on the experience of on the experiences that they have had by participating, and come up with some learning from that.
Well, not everybody has participated in or will participate in all four, so we need to not make it kind of exclusive. I wanted to add something else. I mean, these are all really important topics, and I'm struggling here with how to connect it back to Pass It On Network. And the welfare and well-being of older adults. Something that came to mind, which might create a connection, I don't know, it's just not something I'm thinking of right now, is the fact that more and more healthcare professionals are prescribing nature to their patients.
Social prescriptions.
As a way, yes, as a way to develop awe and to develop a reduce stress and whatever. The connection that I'm finding here is that we need to make sure that that resource is available for us and for the next generation or seventh generation to benefit from as a natural resource, natural remedy for the life that is probably not going to change that much for people who are continuing to be in the capitalist world or in the industrial world and all that other stuff. So that's, I don't know how to connect it all, but I think we need to bring it back to the core of the Pastel Network participants and not move too much aside into finding oneself.
Maybe Osnet in the form of some survey about what they are really thinking about relative to their health and time in nature. Like, have they heard of these social prescriptions? Would they in fact want one? Why would they want it? You know, like a little probe into, yeah, we all know what's currently on the front page of the papers and what's sexy and what's trending, but how many people are really even paying attention to it if they are aware of it, and would they apply it to themselves or recommend it to their neighbors, and how they think that might change something for them, you know, like what do they think it would do for them?
We could throw a poll in the beginning and people can click on it. I can tell you that surveys, pre-surveys, post-surveys are not particularly compelling. People don't do them, but we need to do something. If we do it in the moment. If we do it, we ask people to reflect on a piece of paper and write something, reflect into the chat or something like that. But it's like, what's in it for me and what's in it for the world and what's in it for the future are things that are interconnected, but you know, it's like throwing a rock into a pond and you have those ripple effects. You're the rock, and the ripple effects and the further, the most external one is very weak. And that's the relationship you have into things that are not touching you directly.
Right.
So could I make a suggestion about that? One is, so I'm trained in the United Kingdom, Canada, United States. I'm not licensed in all those places, but I could, as a physician, I could offer a social prescription to everybody. And let me just say that it's much stronger in the UK. Ontario just started a Department of Social Prescription, and it's not really much in the US, to be honest with you. I used to prescribe dance because I think that's a combination of things that relate to healthy aging. The most important thing probably is to just keep moving. But I will say I don't like the word social prescription for two reasons. One is it doesn't say environmental. It says, okay, you just be among a bunch of other people. And the other is it adopts the medical model too much. I mean, that's the risk of it. Okay, now that the doctor said you're going to take a walk in nature, we know it's good for you. Well, that's of course nonsense. Most doctors don't take enough walks in nature. So my concrete suggestion was, why don't we make up a little certificate that says, eco-social prescription from the tree doctor, you know, this is what you should all go do.
Yeah, that's fun.
Why not? I mean, something. I'm just, for me, it's just what we have been doing and will be doing misses the connection to the individual.
Well, one thing I would be willing to assert, since we're talking about taking action here, is, as arguably a world expert on brain health, I will attest that if you go out and take action towards some kind of environmental activity, be it a direct action by marching or writing a letter or putting solar panels on your house, that is, as long as you move your body to do this, that is the best thing you can do for brain health, because frankly, it relates very directly to pass it on. It relates to purpose. It relates to positivity. It relates to legacy. So I'd love to be able to fund a study that shows that environmental activists get less dementia than those that don't take action supporting the environment. But you could make that claim, and then I could.
To disprove it. Well, Peter, I think
Well,
you
but
we know that sense of
for the
purpose.
wrap up in August. And we
Right,
need to
that's
work
food
on
for
it.
thought.
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
Right. And
Well, it does tie back though, Osnat. If you go back to the, you know, the creed that you follow, Jen and Moira prescribed that from the beginning, right? Are you in right relations?
Yes.
Where do you spend your time? You know, I'm not using the right words, but if we tied back to that, I'm pretty sure you can tether to some kind of way where people at this age, are they there? And is that fitting with nature for them? I think you can tie it all back, because
Okay. I think we need to make it visible.
yeah, and the place where we're not, many of us who have advocated for aging for a long time never felt seen or important relative to all the issues. Perhaps it's because we haven't been able to make the case of how important the oldest member of our beings really are to us. So why would we be any more important as we age than our trees or our rocks or our water if we can't even get there? So there's a way to tie these things together that does make sense to aging advocate, because that's been bugging me a lot too, Osnat. Like it's a direction that we take, but is it off, or is it exactly the put your hands up in the middle of the river like Moira and Jan asked us to do from the beginning?
I have a pretty hard stop at 2:30,
Yeah.
so I'm
I
gonna
have that too.
Okay.
see you in July.